Hello and welcome, dear reader. Have you ever taken a moment to reflect on the untold wisdom that the elderly hold? In a world that constantly urges us to move forward, to keep chasing bigger, better, faster goals, it's easy to forget that there's something incredibly valuable in the stories of those who have walked through life before us. These individuals, often quiet in their demeanor, carry with them an immense depth of understanding about the world, about love, and about loss. These are lessons that no textbook or motivational speaker can teach, for they are born from lived experience. Today, I invite you to join me on a journey through the life of George, a man who has learned the deepest truths about life, not through mere success or achievement, but through the quiet moments of joy, heartache, failure, and love. This is his story, one that serves as a guide for anyone searching for meaning, purpose, and wisdom. In the heart of a small, quiet town in the American Midwest, there stood an ancient oak tree, its branches twisted and gnarled, each one a silent witness to the passing of countless seasons. Beneath this mighty oak, sitting on an old, creaky wooden bench, was George, a man well into his 80s. His face was etched with the lines of time, each wrinkle telling a different chapter of his journey. His life had not been an easy one, but it had been full of rich experiences that shaped him into the wise man he had become. He had been a soldier, a husband, a father, a grandfather, and a friend. Over the years, he had witnessed the beauty of life and the brutality of it. Yet through all the joys and tragedies, George had learned invaluable lessons that most people would take a lifetime to learn. George often found himself reflecting on his younger years, a time when he was full of ambition and dreams. In his 20s, he had been a man driven by the belief that happiness lay in success. Like so many young people, he was fixated on the idea that more was always better. More money, more possessions, more recognition. He worked tirelessly, climbing the corporate ladder, focusing all his energy on achieving what he thought would make him happy. But as the years passed, he began to notice a recurring theme in his life. Despite all the outward success, there was an underlying feeling of emptiness. It wasn't until the birth of his daughter that the realization hit him hard. He had been so absorbed in his career that he had missed out on the small, precious moments, the first steps, the first words, the look in her eyes when she called him Dad. It dawned on him that no amount of wealth or status could ever replace the moments of connection he had missed. Time, he realized, was the most valuable thing one could have, and yet it was the one thing you could never get back. This realization marked the first turning point in George's life. He had spent his early years chasing a dream that turned out to be an illusion. He had neglected the very things that made life worth living, the people who mattered most, the quiet moments of joy, and the importance of simply being present. It wasn't just the success he had been chasing, but the wrong type of success. Now as a father, he vowed never to repeat the same mistake. He understood that the most precious currency in life wasn't money, it was time. And it wasn't things that would bring him happiness, it was love, family, and shared experiences. As George entered his 30s and 40s, his perspective on life began to shift dramatically. The relentless pursuit of success gradually faded into the background, replaced by a desire to find meaning in the relationships he had built and the moments he spent with loved ones. He learned that real happiness wasn't about achieving bigger goals, but about living a life of purpose and connection. The laughter of his children, the warmth of his wife Anna's hand in his, the quiet evenings spent reading a book, and the long walks in the park with his friends. These were the moments he cherished most. His relationship with Anna, in particular, became a cornerstone of his life. They had spent over 50 years together, weathering the storms of life side by side. Through the births of their children, the deaths of friends, the highs and lows of marriage, they had always been there for one another. George realized that love wasn't about grand gestures or the absence of conflict. It was about the small, everyday acts of kindness and support that built a life together. But it was during a particularly difficult time, when Anna became gravely ill, that George discovered just how deeply love ran. He had always known that he loved her, but it was during her illness that he truly understood the depth of his commitment and the real meaning of sacrifice. George took on the role of caregiver with unwavering devotion. The long nights spent sitting by her bedside, the quiet moments of comforting her when she was in pain, the little acts of care, these moments taught him more about love than any celebration or victory ever could. True love, he realized, wasn't in the words you spoke, but in the actions you took when the person you loved needed you most. It was in those small moments of care, in the mundane routines of daily life, that love was built and solidified. Yet, life for George was never without its hardships. There were moments of financial instability, periods of loss, and times when everything seemed to be falling apart. There were moments of great failure. His business venture had collapsed, and with it, his sense of security. But it was during these times of adversity that George learned some of the most valuable lessons of his life. Failure, he discovered, was not the end of the road. It was merely a stepping stone on the path to something greater. Each time he fell, he learned to rise again. Each time life knocked him down, he found a way to get back up and keep moving forward. One of the most significant moments of self-realization came when George found himself struggling with the loss of his business. At first, he was devastated, but over time, he began to understand that his worth was not defined by his financial success, but by the person he had become. He learned that life wasn't about the accumulation of things, but about the relationships you formed and the resilience you showed in the face of adversity. He had experienced loss, disappointment, and even failure, but through it all, he had discovered an inner strength that he never knew he had. And as he reflected on these experiences, he shared his wisdom with his children and grandchildren, teaching them that the true measure of a life well lived is not the successes you have, but how you rise after you fall. As George grew older, his wisdom deepened, and his understanding of life became even more profound. He learned to appreciate the simple pleasures, the warm cup of coffee in the morning, the sound of his grandchildren laughing, the beauty of a sunset. He understood that happiness wasn't something that could be pursued. It was something that could only be found by living fully in the present moment. And as he sat beneath the oak tree, watching the world go by, he realized that he had come to the most important lesson of all. Life wasn't about seeking happiness, it was about creating it. George's journey wasn't just about the milestones he reached or the goals he achieved. It was about the small, often overlooked moments, the ones that are easy to miss when you're too focused on the future or too preoccupied with your own ambitions. His story is a testament to the power of love, resilience, and the importance of living fully in the present. As he sat under the oak tree, George knew that his time on earth was coming to an end, but he wasn't afraid. He had lived a full life, a life rich in love, lessons, and experiences. And with that, he was at peace. His legacy lived on in the hearts of his children and grandchildren. The lessons he taught them about the importance of time, love, and relationships were passed down through generations. And as they sat beneath the oak tree, sharing stories and laughter, George's spirit lived on, reminding them of the most important truth of all: the journey is the reward.